Welcome to the 100% Wild Podcast. I'm Mark Kenyon with Wired Hunt, and with me as usual is Matt Drury. It's been a while, man. How are you?
I'm good, buddy. It has been a while. It's probably been over a month, hasn't it?
I don't think it's been that long, but we definitely took a little break for the holidays, so that was nice. Did you have a good Christmas and New Year's and everything?
We did. It's cool to get to see Cam's 2.5, so it's cool to get to see him kind of experience it for the first time, and it was a real fun holiday. We had some illness, in the family there leading into it, but it was all good, and even got sneak a few hunts in, so it's all good.
That is good. And speaking of family, we've got a family member with us today too, right?
We do. We got old man winner, Terry Drury, my pops. What's up, Dad?
Good morning. Happy New Year to everybody.
How are you today? You're at the farm, right?
Yes, I am. I'm good. We're finally getting a little bit of weather that we've been waiting on for the last 3 months. Now that the season's ended.
Yeah, now
just about over.
The season's over, and we have to head to Indianapolis for the ATA show, and then Vegas for SHOT Show.
Yes.
Now the real work begins.
I wish we'd have gotten this weather about a month ago.
Yeah, for sure.
How has your hunting been, Terry, in these past couple weeks?
I will say it was decent up until about the middle of December. And then once mid-December and the Christmas holidays hit, it just literally ended. We're still seeing, quite a few antlerless, but my bucks have literally disappeared. They've all went underground. And it happens like that every year here on this particular farm. I know some areas are a little bit different, but man, oh man, it's brutal right now. Very dismal.
Are you getting any pictures?
We're still trying to harvest a few does.
Are you getting any pictures though?
No, my cameras literally after about the 15th or 16th of December, they just died. All the Reconyx pictures are just, a few spikes and a lot of antlerless.
Where do they go? I don't get it. It's just like, do they go into the woods and they hunker down, or do they go to a different property? Or because I'm experiencing the same thing on a lease. The pictures have really sucked since since late November for me.
I would love to radio collar each and every buck on my farm just 1 year to find out where they do go. I think a lot of it is just lack of movement. Once the rut's over and this cool weather hits, their need to feed is still there because of the temperatures, but I'm out of food as well. So it's a mystery, but I think a lot of them just don't move. They just go underground and try and recharge their batteries for quite a while.
So when the food source is gone, because I'm kind of getting in this similar situation, my biologic plots are all kind of eaten down, and I'm running out of the little bit of standing corn that I paid the farmer to leave. So at that point, what do they just stay in the timber and eat mass crop, or what? Browse on just whatever they find right there where they're bedded, or what are your thoughts?
Well, we had a decent mass crop when it came to pin oaks and some of the red, but for the most part, my white oaks I haven't had an acorn come off a white oak tree in about 4 years now, and I don't understand why. Plus, there's some type of disease that is killing a lot of my oak trees. So we're suffering as far as the mass crop is concerned, but they're very nomadic here in this particular area. And once your food source is gone, we lose a tremendous volume of deer. The density goes literally down to maybe half or a third of what it was during the peak of the season. And we've still got a lot of cover, but we just don't have the numbers that we had. With that being said, our buck to doe ratio is still out of whack, so I'm still trying to manage the the antlerless, trying to harvest as many does as we can.
Yeah. If you don't mind saying, and maybe you do, how many does have you guys harvested up there this year so far?
I think all total we're about at 20. I think with, I've had a couple guests in, and I think collectively we're about 20, and we've only shot 2 bucks. Yeah. So we're working at a 10-to-1 ratio, doe to buck. And I don't know too many people that are doing it that aggressively. We've been doing that for 12 years now.
Yeah,
I've always ran between 13-to-1, 12-to-1, 14-to-1, 10-to-1. I'm always very, very aggressive when it comes to doe management, and it doesn't seem to have had any effect. A lot of them are having twins and triplets, and no matter how hard we try, there's still a lot of does to go around here. So our numbers are still up.
Can't keep up with it.
No.
That's tough.
But a 10-to-1 clip is pretty aggressive.
And you donate the majority of that to the local Share the Harvest, right?
We do both. Because I've got, the construction company with construction guys, I usually have, 3 or 4 of them processed, and then I take it down to the shop and we keep it in the freezer all year for chili and meatloaf and tacos and, burgers, whatever we decide to cook up that day if we got weather like this. And in addition to that, we had, Mike Joggers came in and Nolan came in, the grandson. So everybody has a use for deer meat. They live off of it year round. So a lot of them go home with those guys.
Yeah. Well, Mark, how about you? I mean, I know that you had a few late season hunts there. Did you have any luck with Holyfield?
Yeah, Holyfield, it's been a long, winding story with him, but to make that long story short, I've seen him a bunch more, but sometime in early to mid-December, I finally started to kind of finalize my decision on what I want to do with that deer. He made it through so much of the season already that I ended up deciding that I would not try to kill him this year because I thought he was so close to making it, and I'd already had a great season, killed a couple bucks, had plenty of venison in the freezer. So I decided to kind of stop the chase. So I saw him a few more times. I think he made it through the year, and then I just focused on does. So put a couple does in the freezer, and just like Terry, got to do a little bit of that management. We've got that crazy whacked out ratio too here in Michigan with so many does and most hunters just focusing on killing bucks. Unfortunately, lots of young bucks. So I've tried to pass a lot of bucks this year. I've tried to shoot a bunch of does, and we'll see how it pans out in 2017. But I'm just at that point now where I'm just getting geeked for the next season. So I'm already brainstorming about habitat improvements and how I want to move this and adjust that. So, the cycle continues.
It's funny you say that. I was sitting in my box blind last night, last hunt of the year, and that was what was going through my mind is like, all right, we need to do this, this, and this. We need to do this in March. We need to do this in, August. It's like there's so many things that you can do to improve it. And once the season ends, it's like, all right, time to start up for next year.
Yeah, I kind of love this time of year because like you have this automatic refresh of hope.
What's that, Terry?
Hey, guys, I've been trying to do that for 40 years, and it never has worked. The only one that works for is Mark Drury.
Yeah, I hear you. They had a good year at their place.
They had a tremendous year.
Oh, my gosh, yeah. Unbelievable. Have you seen, I saw in that live video that Mark and Taylor did the other day that they were talking about this has kind of been the fruits of the EHD tragedy a few years ago, and now you're starting to see these deer make it to older age classes, the ones that did survive, and now they're much more healthy because of the fact they grew up in a less saturated deer population. Have you seen anything like that, Terry, on your farms?
I have not. The EHD seems like it has hit us here 3 or 4 years in a row. So we're not in that recovery phase. And we had a substantial amount of property leased over in Illinois, too, and it was even more dismal over there. It was awful. The worst I've ever seen, where you would sit for evenings at a time and see two deer, 3 deer, maybe 4 deer in several sittings. It was just really, really bad. So we haven't got into that recovery phase yet. And I don't know how long it's going to take. Sometimes it takes 10 to 15, 20 years before that happens. It just so happens where they're at up there. Evidently, EHD went through and took a number of them out, but it didn't get them all. And the ones that did live through it seemed to be extremely healthy from what we can tell. So I think it's very, very random as well. And from what I've heard and what I've seen this year here in Missouri, a lot of guys were seeing deer last year, and then they didn't have them this year. Part of which was, I think, attributable to the fact that they didn't move very well, and the other part to the fact that I think a lot of them got wiped out with EHD one more time this year. So we're really struggling as far as our numbers are concerned when it comes to mature deer.
Well, how do you feel like some of the, like in our situation, Missouri, the Department of Conservation for Missouri, some of the changes that they've made, do you feel like that actually will help the cause, going from $3 down to $2, or, taking the amount of doe that you can harvest down? It used to be unlimited in most of the counties, and now it's, what is it, 2 per weapon or something like that? I mean, it's way down in the amount of deer you can actually harvest. You think that'll actually have an effect?
Well, they've got a difficult mission at hand, a difficult task, in the fact that they're battling EHD and CWD. We've had a few positives here in the state of Missouri that has thrown a whole different monkey wrench into things. So what they're doing is somewhat counterintuitive. on one hand, they're trying to eradicate a herd in different areas, and on the other hand, they're trying to cut back on the number that you're killing. So, it's almost like they're teetering the scales, and it's a rather fragile recipe here to try and rectify it. And I don't know that there is an answer, to be perfectly honest with you. I think every biologist has got a different strategy, but I know the two strategies they're employing are somewhat counterintuitive depending on what location you're in. They go into areas where the CWD has been recognized, and they're trying to eradicate the entire herd in those areas to keep it from spreading. And then yet on the other hand, where EHD was prevalent, they're trying to cut the numbers back so that there's more deer. So it's a really, really fine line. And at the end of the day, I don't know that you can fool Mother Nature. She's going to do her dirty work when she wants to, and she's going to be, give you the rewards whenever you get the opportunity from time to time. But nothing we can do will change what Mother Nature can do in one swift sweep of the hand. I know that. We've seen that over the last 50 years of hunting.
For the first time in a long time, well, first time ever, really, I'm seeing more and more people on social media talking about, you shouldn't be harvesting does, and our population's hurting. I let every doe walk. I want to, help, every doe to have their babies and all this and that. But I think it's different for everybody's piece of property. I mean, you go to your place or Mark's place and you see 40 or 50 deer a night and a lot of does. It's just not the same. My lease last night, we saw 40 deer. This is farmland down by the river, and we saw 40 deer that, the majority were does. There's certain places where that you still need to do your herd management. It's so far out of whack, you still need to do it. But yet I'm seeing more and more where people are kind of, social media warriors are kind of chastising people for doe hunting. And I don't know. I don't know. I don't know that I think it's different for every person's property more than anything.
Well, and I think that's really, you're seeing the results of the randomness of all of this. Here you got some areas where the deer literally have been wiped out, and that's what we experienced over in Illinois. I mean, the numbers were way down over there, like almost non-existent. So therefore, we weren't harvesting a doe. We didn't have the intentions of harvesting does over there, and that's where it becomes, I'm going to say, a personal challenge for each individual to become stewards of the land. You know what your property looks like. You know what kind of numbers you should have there. And when your numbers are cut in half or cut by 2/3, all of a sudden, a light bulb goes off and says, you know what, I need to cut back on my aggressiveness or my assertiveness. I need to let some does walk. And I think that's what it boils down to. Everyone being a steward of their own property, having conservation in mind. But just as you stated, Matt, in certain areas, and that's what I referred to early on, that this is very random. In certain areas, the deer density is still very high. They were born on a 1-to-1 ratio, and trying to get that buck-to-doe ratio in check or in balance is always good. And that's almost impossible in certain areas whenever we're seeing, 15 or 20 does for every buck. Mm-hmm. Your doe-to-buck ratio is so far out of whack that you almost can't do it single-handedly. So I think everyone has to look at their own parcel of property and be stewards of the land and think about conservation first, and try and do it, in some areas as aggressive as they can, and in other areas kind of lay off.
Yeah. Well put.
Yeah. And I hate to be to continue with this focus on challenges, but we have a listener question today, Matt, that's kind of focused on a challenge that I think that definitely you, Terry, maybe have some insight on. So what do you think about getting to that question, Matt?
Let's do it. The question of the day is brought to you by Cabela's, the world's foremost outfitter.
Hi, guys. My name is Nate Maddox. I hunt south central Wisconsin. I got a couple questions about dogs interrupting deer habitat and sanctuaries. Namely, I hunt a 20-acre public parcel here next to some agriculture, but also adjacent to a really big 60 or 80-acre sort of public park. There's some great funnels leading into this acreage, but around the periphery, there are a couple houses that walk their dogs easily, a few hundred yards into the woods, give them free rein. And I'm wondering how I should treat that, if that's going to clue the bucks in that that's not a sanctuary, or if they're just going to use it, nocturnally, or if they start to get programmed to know when the dogs are in there, or even more comfortable than they would be for humans. I also hunt a 50-acre parcel a couple hours north of here that's private, and I'm the only one on there for archery season. What I just found out that the rifle hunters that use that property near the end of November were in there this weekend running about 5 of their dogs around, and it concerns me that maybe that had some permanent influence on what was perceived as sanctuary space for the bucks. Appreciate your feedback. Thanks, guys.
So Terry, I understand you've had some experiences like this too, right?
Yes, oddly enough, I have. I've had firsthand experience with dogs, and Mark and I literally grew up hunting with dogs. We started by rabbit hunting. We did a lot of squirrel hunting, and we've got a tremendous number of friends that do waterfowling and still a lot of bird hunting. We know, a guy like Chris Dorsey who lives every day for bird hunting. So, being able to hunt with a dog is refreshing, but it boils down to respect, I think, first and foremost, and that's just how we were raised. If a fellow would let you, a farmer would let you go in there and rabbit hunt and run your dogs, that was great. And same way with pheasant hunting out, in South Dakota and Nebraska and some of those states. If you got permission, it's one thing. If you don't have permission, that's a little bit different. In answer to his question, I would say that you'd have to look at the big picture. Maybe geographically, you would want to Google Earth and go on there and look at what he's talking about, these parcels, because I don't know what's around it. Is it more of the same? Is it a suburbia area where the deer are kind of forced to stay in those little bitty sanctuaries? Or is there big parcels of timber that are around it where they have an option to go to? So it changes just a little bit depending on what the big picture is. I would first and foremost say 20 acres is pretty small, but if they're used to seeing those landowners every single day of their life, then they get somewhat, not domesticated, but they get to the point where they will tolerate it, and most of it is smell. If they walk out the door and they smell like bacon and eggs and toast every morning, then that deer is somewhat accustomed to that. If they're not used to that, then by all means, on 20 acres, if they blow out of there, it's going to be hard to get them back. In same way, conversely, with that 50 or 60 acre parcel that he was referring to as a sanctuary, man, if they went through there with their dogs and they hunted it pretty aggressively, I would doubt very seriously if those deer will be back, particularly this time of the year after the firearm season. A few stragglers might pour in there, but man, when they start running, sometimes you can't stop them. I mean, they may go 3 miles, 5 miles, 7 miles this time of year. It just seems like they run further than they would in the early season. Part of it is because of the lack of cover. So he's got a tough situation there. But again, I would go back to the big picture and see what's around it. Are there bigger blocks of timber, or is that the only sanctuary area, in that particular general location? And I would treat it really, really gingerly because they are fairly small parcels.
Now, when you had issues with dogs on your farm, I don't know if that's still happening now. I remember seeing it in some videos in the past couple of years. How long did it take for those deer to start returning to their normal habits, or what type of impact did you see on your hunting there immediately after that?
Well, this was a bigger block of timber. It was a bigger parcel. So what we saw was when the dogs ran through, and supposedly they were chasing coyotes, when in reality, oftentimes they were chasing deer, because we have video footage of them doing that, and then also caught them with a deer at bay or caught them with a deer on the ground. But wow, more often than not, the deer would run 2 hollows over or 3 hollows over, or maybe a half a mile or something, and then they would return because of the volume of timber. It was a fairly sizable piece. But it got to the point where it was literally a daily event, and we couldn't hunt our own property. I mean, which boils down to respect. When you can't hunt your own property, and it's because of neighboring dogs, it makes it really, really difficult. When we grew up, we had the respect for the adjacent landowners, and we would knock and ask permission, or call and ask permission, and more often than not, they would give you permission. But in this day and age, things have gotten a little more privatized, and it's a little bit different. So it's really about having respect for your neighbor and honoring their wishes, because if you're not paying the mortgage and you're not paying the insurance and you're not paying the taxes, you really don't have much of a right to be hunting there, particularly from a liability standpoint. So you really got to respect the landowner and what his wishes are.
Not only that, but
Yeah.
the hard work, the blood, sweat, and tears through the off season. I mean, the amount of money that you have to spend just to put in the food plots, or the crops that you plant, or to harvest the crops. It goes on and on and on. There's more reasons why it makes no sense for someone to allow their dogs to run your property than and they always it goes back to, well, they just kind of went where they wanted to go. It's like, okay, I mean, you do have some control over where you unleash the dog. So I don't know, that we noticed that the year that you finally kind of got it under control and had to get some authorities involved, and when that happened, we noticed the hunting, that was like the best year we had ever had there on the farm for big deer and for seeing big deer. And then EHD hit, and it just kind of was unfortunate timing since then. But I mean, that was a really good year we had that year. That's when you killed Chris, and I shot that the 150-10, and I mean, that was a fun year. And we thought, hey, it's finally back to where it was the first year you bought it. But EHD got you ever since.
Well, and in addition to that, the sweat equity and the time and the money and all that other stuff that goes into it, I was more upset about the guests that we had in camp, and when their hunts were ruined. The construction guys came up. All of them are blue-collar guys. They took off time from work to come up and enjoy a hunt, when in reality we spent 2 days where dogs running through the timber running deer out, and those guys just didn't have much of a hunt. And same way with guests that would fly in and buy a non-resident tag out of their pocket, maybe have some airline footage or rental or airline costs or rental car, and then all of a sudden their hunt was ruined. It became, just a point, again, getting back to respect and being courteous to your neighbors. Whenever you start hurting other people monetarily, and they're out there taking off time from work trying to enjoy a nice hunt in the Midwest, it sends a bad message and a really, really poor signal about neighbors. You just getting back to, an ethical sportsman and being able to respect your neighbor's wishes, I think says a lot. But when you're hurting other guys, like blue-collar guys that are taking time off of work, it's a whole different ballgame. I understand it to a certain degree, but when it's every day and you can't hunt your property anymore, that's when I had literally hundreds and hundreds of reconics pictures and hours of video footage where guys were in a tree and the dogs had run under them, running deer, and the hunt was ruined. That's when it got time to start getting some other people involved.
And this isn't condemning, the guys that go run dogs and, predator hunt with dogs. And I mean, it's a fun sport and a lot of people take part of it. It's just a matter of getting back to the respect thing. Hey, do what you want on your piece, but we don't, we're trying to whitetail hunt, turkey hunt. This is our living, do whatever you want on your piece, but stay off of ours. That's kind of the mentality that we have towards it. It's not condemning the dog hunter at all,
Yeah.
Well, and
Terry,
our team members, I'd say probably half to 3/4 of them are coyote hunters, and we enjoy coyote hunting. Last year, Dylan and Chris Comstock killed a few coyotes here. We went over to Illinois, and, it's part of it. We enjoy the sport as well, but we're still going to respect the adjacent landowners. We're not going to do something to offend someone or trespass or whatever it may be, but we're still going to enjoy the sport, and we encourage people to do the coyote hunting. We enjoy it, and, they're a predatory animal. I wish we could wipe the majority of them out because they're dragging deer down as well. So that's something that I think everybody has to think about very long and hard and say, you know what, I'm still going to go out and do the coyote hunting, but I'm going to knock on a door or ask permission first. It's really not that hard.
Yeah. Now, here's my question. What if someone's out there right now who's dealing with this kind of issue themselves? They've got a neighbor's dog or someone's dogs running around on their property. What kind of action can they take? What did you have luck with when it came to trying to stop this issue?
Boy, that's a tough one. We literally caught those dogs on a regular basis, maybe a dozen times or more. I don't know how many collectively, but I'd take them back to the landowner and give them back and ask that they didn't do it anymore. Unfortunately, it fell on deaf ears. So I finally had to document, when it came to all the documentation, and I spent 10 or 12 years of documenting all this. with trail camera reconics pictures and video footage. And then I finally had to go to authorities to get it taken care of. And you can lobby to try and maybe get some regulations in place, and from a conservation standpoint, or maybe from a legal or law enforcement standpoint. But it takes a long time to get that done. And I continue documenting it, and that's really the only recourse you have. Typically, if you can solve it, in a really gentlemanly manner, that's the way to handle it. But if it goes beyond that and it just doesn't get rectified, then you got to try another source. But it's a hard problem to remedy. I will tell you that. It took me 12 years.
And you always took the high road. I mean, that's the thing.
Yes.
I don't think a lot of people would have had the patience to take the high road. You never harmed an animal. You always caught them and took them back. You fed them. You watered them. I mean, really went above and beyond. I think what the majority of kind of the solution you usually kind of hear amongst friends wasn't a solution for us. And, it just says something, I think, to the point you're trying to make about being neighborly and being, respectful of other people's property. So you led by example, that's for sure. But it did take a long time to fix the problem. And it's really still not 100% fixed.
Not 100%, but it has slowed it down and it's deterred it somewhat. But we're dog lovers by nature. We just, Matt knows this better than anybody. The dog that we have now at home gets treated better than we treated the kids. She's so spoiled rotten, it's not even funny.
Yes.
So we're dog lovers, and we grew up hunting with dogs, rabbit hunted. Mark and I, that's the way we got our start. Squirrel hunted, and did a little bit of bird hunting. But it's just, it all boils down to that respect thing and being courteous to your neighbor.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had similar situations on a property I hunt in Ohio where it hasn't been like an everyday thing, but at least once a week or something, there's 2 or 3 dogs that come running through, and it's frustrating, but it becomes something that you just kind of have to deal with one way or the other. And what we found, at least on this piece, was that the deer were used to it in a way, like they knew these dogs were going to come through. So at that moment, your hunt was screwed up. But, 4 hours later or something, you could certainly still see a nice buck or something still coming through. It was just one of those deals where in that certain situation, in those few minutes or that hour, your hunt's kind of screwed, and then you go talk to someone and hope that it won't happen again. But it's a frustrating thing, and I think to your point, Mark or Matt and Terry, you just got to take the high road and deal with it the best possible way. So Matt, do you think there's anything else that we need to cover on this one?
No, I mean, I think, the basic point here is respect your neighbor, and it doesn't always work that way. I understand in the real world, some people don't think that way. But, you can only control what you can control. So I'd say if you go about it, try to do it the right way, more times than not, sooner or later, it's going to work in your favor.
Yeah. And I think to our listener,
Matt,
Mark,
it's
not the end of the world.
I would encourage everyone to work with their conservation agent as well.
Yeah.
At least make them aware of what you're trying to accomplish and what you're doing, and try and do it the right way. Taking the high road is the only way, but working with your conservation department, your conservation agent, if they have regulations on the books that they can enforce, sometimes that helps. Many of them do not, but at least make them aware of it and document it so you've got something going forward.
Your best bet's always to have your conservation agent's number and your cell phone, for a multitude of reasons. You know what I mean? They're there to try to help. I think they kind of get a bad rap a little bit, but, by and large, you want to keep them in tune with what's happening on your property, and they're there to help ultimately.
Absolutely. Well, with that, Matt, what do you say we wrap this one up? And next time we'll talk about something a little bit more fun and less of a downer. Does that sound good?
That sounds good, man. Let's do it.
All right. Well, my one reminder to everyone would just be that if you have a question that you'd like us to answer on a future episode, just head over to wiredtohunt.com/100%wild. And we'd love to take a look at maybe some questions related to, postseason scouting or how to plan for the new year, or even shed hunting. Maybe all those things are coming up here, and I'm excited about them. I'm sure you are too, Matt. So if you have any questions about that kind of stuff, send them on in. And you can also, of course, check out the latest on Wired to Hunt and across all of our social media platforms. And Matt, what kind of updates do you have?
Absolutely. On the 100% Wild podcast, obviously, you can view the video side of it on the Drury Outdoors YouTube page, where we have all types of updates. We're doing an original video, a throwback video every week. We have old episodes of Wildlife Obsession, Natural Born, full episodes that we put up each week. So go check it out by all means. It's pretty cool. We're hitting a lot of views every week, and we're going to be doing a lot more of that type of stuff in 2017 here. So by all means, check that out. Our social media, the official Drury Outdoors Facebook page. We're doing all kinds of live feeds, and then of course at Drury Outdoors on Instagram and Twitter. So one last piece I would like to close with is, if you have any serious hunters out there that have been videoing their hunts and they're looking to maybe try to take their stab at the outdoor video business, shoot me an email at comments@druryoutdoors.com with your reel. We're looking for some new teams on Drury Outdoors for the first time in a long time, and have some pretty cool opportunities and show ideas. So if you're serious and you have a video reel of previous hunts, I'd love to see it. So that's all I have for today.
Very cool. That's an exciting opportunity for sure. And to everyone listening and watching, thanks so much for being with us. And if you're still hunting, good luck.
Peace.